Putin just had to flee Sochi because as he finished his big meeting, Ukrainian drones came to the city to greet him. As if this wasn't scary enough, it seems that some of the Ukrainian drones that are hitting Russia are not actually coming from Ukraine, but rather other countries like Kazakhstan. That's why some Russians are now calling on Putin to launch another special military operation, this time against Kazakhstan. But Putin knows one thing: Russia just cannot afford it. I say this because after 3.5 years of special military operation in Ukraine, the Kremlin is finally being forced to admit that Russian losses are just unsustainable. The reason for this admission seems to be President Trump's comments about Russia being a paper tiger, which Russian officials are still trying to refute weeks later. So let's get into all that and more in today's video, starting of course with Putin's big speech in Sochi, Russia. It did not end how he had planned. According to Kremlin media, late on October 2nd, Ukrainian drones attacked Sochi where Vladimir Putin had just finished his speech. Around 10:30 p.m., airports in Sochi and nearby areas were closed off, and half an hour later, Sochi's mayor announced the threat of a drone attack on the city. Because of this, city's airports were closed for next 7 hours, which meant 10 outgoing flights and 40 incoming flights were delayed or cancelled. The reason I share all this is because this was the big day where everyone was looking at Sochi. Putin was holding this big meeting where he had invited a lot of pro-Russia international journalists to the city. He wanted to show off how well Russia is doing and how safe the city is. In reality, things got completely out of control. No flights coming in and out, and only thing that was in the air were Ukrainian drones. Quite embarrassing for the second strongest military in the world. But the thing is, the drones weren't just visiting the conference. In fact, we had some Ukrainian drones that made their way to Russia's Orsk oil refinery, which is deep inside Russian borders. Here's the clip of that attack.
Вон летит. Не снимайте, съебывайтесь отсюда, блядь. Сейчас он упадет, туда упадет, везде. Не снимайте, это дурачье, ёпта. На центральную проходную летит. Еще один за одного ждут. Еще два с Самары сейчас, говорит, идут. Большие. Еще два с Самары. Вот он направо пошел. Это маленький, еще два больших пошел. Сейчас, по-моему, уебет. Сейчас уебет бегом. Ебать! Ебать! Там еще один летит. Еще двое Самары, короче. По тачкам, ну его нафиг.
This is one of the largest refineries in the country and by far the largest in the southern Ural region of Russia. It processes around 6 million tons of crude oil every single year, which is roughly 3% of Russia's total capacity. Now, the regional government did admit there was an attack on the refinery, but he claimed that the refinery's operations were not disrupted. Unfortunately for him, the video clips that were published around the event show exact opposite happening. This is exactly why Putin signed a new law recently, which made it illegal to record or publish or to redistribute any images or videos of Ukrainian attack. That's why in that clip that you guys just saw, there were people yelling at the cameraman telling him, don't film, because now he's either gonna face a fine or worse, gulags. That's because you see, when clips like that are published around Russian social media, public realizes that the Russian officials are lying and they start taking actions to protect themselves. Which meant after this clip was published on Russian social media, public quickly lined up at the gas stations to get whatever gas they could. Take a look at this clip.
It's at Bashneft. One column's running 92. Everyone's in line, basically. Not many cars on our side.
Now, while some Russians were looking for gas, others were looking at something far more complicated. You see, there's one thing I haven't told you guys yet. This refinery is roughly 1,400 kilometers or around 1,000 miles from the Ukrainian borders. That's to say, it's very deep inside Russia. So deep that Ukrainian drones, even the long-range ones, would not be able to reach it from Ukraine. But it's only 5 kilometers or roughly 2 miles from the Kazakhstani border. And many Russians are blaming Kazakhstan for this drone attack and calling on Putin to launch another military operation. Take a look at this popular post on a Russian military channel. Russian propagandist Mardon says Orsk oil refinery was attacked by drones. The distance from Ukrainian border to Orsk is roughly 1,400 kilometers. It is completely obvious that the drones were launched from the territory of Kazakhstan. Hence the question, isn't it time to carry out a raid on the territory of independent Kazakhstan in order to eliminate threats to Russia's national security? It would be best to clear out Astana right away. Russians are not really for dialogue at all. I do want to clarify. There's no evidence at all that this was from Kazakhstan, but some Russians are ready to launch an invasion. Not Putin though. That's because Putin knows that Russia just doesn't have the capacity for another war. The reason I say this is because finally, Kremlin is admitting that Russia has lost hundreds of thousands of people to this Ukrainian invasion. Kremlin accepts that at least 134,000 Russians are confirmed dead by name, and that's just the ones that families could bury with a notice. Daily losses rarely dip below 120 people dead. Volunteers and convicts are fed into grinders while generals count medals. Thousands of officers gone while whole regions gutted. So much for no losses. Western analysts actually believe the real death toll could be as high as 200 to 300,000 killed. Add in North Korean soldiers and it climbs even higher. Some superpower cannot take Kyiv, cannot keep refineries running, but it can fill cemeteries on schedule. No wonder they are building the largest cemetery in the world. Clearly, as you can see, this invasion is not going according to plan, and things are about to get worse. That's because it looks like US Tomahawks are about to arrive in Ukraine. Hopefully, President Trump approves them very soon. Now, the reports are pointing towards that happening anytime, and that's why President Zelensky has been sending very cryptic messages to Putin. Listen to this one yourself.
So before this moment, we used on long distance targets, we used only our weapon, as you know. And after my meeting with President of the United States, yes, we will maybe have something more. I don't know. We'll see.
Zelensky also warned Russia if Russia continues attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure, especially as the winter is coming up, Ukraine will make sure Moscow has no electricity at all. Well, this is where I want to shift the conversation a little bit about what President Trump recently said, and it seems Russians are still not over it. You guys probably remember President Trump calling Russia a paper tiger. Well, Kremlin officials are still trying to clarify that, hey, Russia is not a tiger, it's a bear. So get your facts right. Listen to Putin's personal spokesperson, Dmitry Medvedev, respond.
Are you a paper tiger?
Россия никак не тигр, все-таки больше Россия.
Russia is not a tiger. It is, after all, more commonly associated with a bear. Paper bears don't exist. Russia is a real bear. Putin has described our bear multiple times with various emotions. There is nothing paper-like about it here.
Медведя здесь ничего бумажного нет.
And, by the way, he repeated for the second time who the paper tiger is. He said he wouldn't talk about anyone else, but he repeated it. I don't know who he is calling a paper tiger. The president of that very country who fled Afghanistan after 10 years, unable to manage it in a week, all his yelling about Russia doing something wrong, about being upset with Putin, about Russia failing at something. It's all absolute bullshit from the first word to the last word. Mr. Trump, if you made commitments in Alaska, then fulfill them. If you cannot fulfill them, then keep quiet. And if you cannot keep quiet, then please, don't speak about peace and agreements anymore.
And it wasn't just Kremlin officials. Putin himself responded to this comment by President Trump at that Valdai conference before he had to flee due to Ukrainian drones. This is what he said.
If we are at war with the entire NATO bloc and are moving forward, feeling confident, and it is a paper tiger, then what is NATO itself? What does it represent? What can it imagine of its own?
Она что тогда из себя представляет?
Well, whatever. The most important thing for us is to be confident in ourselves. And we are confident in ourselves.
Now, another interesting comment Putin made at this conference where he said that Russia will attack Ukrainian nuclear power station if Ukraine does the same. This was Putin's way of blackmailing the world with a nuclear catastrophe. He's basically saying to the Western world that if they don't stop Ukraine from striking Russian refineries and Russian military targets inside Russia, Putin will cause a nuclear catastrophe that everyone will pay for, including Russian citizens. Because if Putin attacks a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, the closest country is Russia, and they will have to suffer from the consequences first before other countries deal with it. Now, I think he meant this as a warning for something. But the funniest part of all this is while he was making that statement, Russian military was releasing videos of their attacks against Ukrainian power plant. None other than the nuclear power plant of Chernobyl. First, let's look at Putin's comments.
Это опасная игра.
This is a dangerous game, and people on the other side also need to understand. If they keep playing with this so dangerously, they still have a working nuclear power stations on their side. And what's stopping us from responding in kind?
И что нам мешает отвечать зеркально?
You guys see the clip on your screen that was published by Russian military, and they're attacking a power plant that supplies the Chernobyl nuclear reactors. Now, of course, the reactors are not operational, but they require a constant power supply and water supply to run the crucial cooling systems for the spent fuel rods. This way, they can avoid a potential nuclear incident that Russia had back in the Soviet Union days. Now, Russia is purposefully attacking power stations because that way they can claim, hey, we never attacked the nuclear power plant, but also cause a nuclear catastrophe that the whole world would have to deal with. This is the Russian blackmail that Putin cannot get over. All this points to one thing. War is getting out of control for Putin, and he's getting desperate. And in fact, it's not just Putin that's realizing this. Russian media personalities are realizing this, and they're now publicly calling out war as a failure while staying inside Russia. That's a very unusual thing you don't see from media in Russia. Everything they say has been approved by Kremlin. So every once in a while, when we see someone speak out of line, we know it's really, really bad. Here we have a Russian war correspondent talking about how in 3.5 years, after hundreds of thousands of deaths, Russia has not achieved any of the goals that Putin announced at the start of this military operation.
According to the approximate calculations, if we advance at such a pace breaking enemy defenses and sparing this system of defensive points, tearing apart the system of strong points, fortifications, and defensive units, it's all very serious. Then it will take us years. For example, if we look at the map, probably less than 40%, approximately 35%, around 35% of the Donetsk People's Republic of the Russian Federation is under Kiev's occupation. And these are the most key areas, the base areas from which the so-called ATO began. Our task now is to drive the enemy out of there. It's hard work. By my calculations, if we continue at this pace, with blood, sweat, and gnawing through tens of meters a day, hundreds of meters a day, listen, it will take from a year to a year and a half just to liberate the territory of the DPR. And how are things going with achieving the other goals of the special military operation today? Well, let's see. The key goals, in my opinion, as stated by the president, are the demilitarization of Ukraine and the denazification of Ukraine. But how far we have come now? Let's see how close we have come to that. It's been 3 years since we launched the special military operation. How far have we come in achieving these goals? Well, to speak frankly and seriously, we are at the beginning of a long path. Despite all the blood that has been shed, the losses, the resources spent, and the destruction caused.
YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is paying creators $64 million per day. Why? Well, because YouTube doesn't have enough creators. That is why you see videos on your homepage that have less than 1,000 views, like this one right here. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that everyone should start a channel. But if you have ever wondered about starting a YouTube channel or a faceless channel, now is a perfect time. YouTube is paying creators millions of dollars every single day, and it's pushing newer and smaller channels now more than ever. But I'm sure you have many questions on how to start and grow a channel. We get questions in our email all the time from some of you guys. That's why we decided to put all our YouTube advice into one YouTube video for completely free. So if you're someone interested in starting your own channel, you can watch that video here on YouTube by clicking the link in the description or card on your screen.